Welcome, friends. You're here now, and that's more than enough. Find a spot that feels gentle, safe, and undemanding. Whether you're listening from a soft-lit room, the hush of a late-night drive, or somewhere entirely your own, this is your space for a little wonder, a little breathing room, and a lot of questions that don't demand answers right away. Tonight, let's rest in the soft tension between what is known and what could be. There's no need to remember everything or to grasp at every thought. Let the mind wander, untethered, with no rush, no expectation. Allow yourself the luxury of curiosity, genuine, unforced, as natural as the slow drift of clouds across the night sky. We gather here at the crossroads of the self and the universe, where personal growth meets the dazzling strangeness of reality. Have you ever sensed that there's more to your life than meets the eye? That underneath the routines and the patterns you trust, something extraordinary, almost forbidden, whispers from behind the curtain of what you consider to be normal. It's easy to believe we're moving forward, learning, mastering, collecting answers. The world asks us to solve, to conquer, to assemble a picture that makes sense. But there's a secret that slips through the cracks of every achievement. Sometimes, the act of solving is just another way of confining ourselves. Sometimes, the search for answers builds walls higher than any question could. You think you're solving the puzzle. What if you're actually building the cage? What if everything you're looking at is a distraction planted by the very patterns you're addicted to seeing? What if clarity is just a more seductive illusion? Tonight, we wander through a landscape of paradox and possibility, a space where certainty isn't a comfort, but a warning sign. This is not a race nor a test. There's no finish line, no final grade, no pressure to get it right. You don't need to remember every word or understand every idea the first time you hear it. Let curiosity be your gentle compass, and let your mind rest in the questions. Throughout this journey, we're exploring the hidden rules of perception, the tricks of memory, and the strange architectures of meaning that shape our days. Together, we'll question what it means to know, to see, to progress. We'll peer through the cracks in our habits and wonder aloud if the lines we follow so faithfully are really there to help us, or to keep us from wandering into the unknown. Tonight, the quantum world isn't just about particles and uncertainty. It's a mirror held up to the mind. In the universe, nothing is ever just one thing or another. Possibilities swirl, stories overlap, and the act of looking changes what's seen. The same is true for us. Every belief, every conclusion, every aha moment might just be a story we've learned to tell ourselves. And sometimes, these stories become the bars on the windows of a cell we never meant to build. Relax into this. Let the idea settle, soft as snowfall. Patterns can be prisons, and sometimes, the greatest act of freedom is to question not just the answers, but the very shape of the puzzle. You're invited not to a lecture, but to a gentle unraveling. This is a space for awe, for the humility of not knowing, for the playful courage it takes to see things differently. Just for tonight, take a slow breath. Notice the quiet places inside yourself, the spaces between thoughts, the pauses in your story. As we wander through the quantum riddles of reality and the mysteries of self-perception, keep those spaces open. Let them grow. Throughout our time together, you'll encounter questions that unsettle, paradoxes that refuse to resolve, and insights that tease at the edges of certainty. Each chapter is crafted as a key that opens, not a door to new answers, but a door to deeper, richer questions. Some of these questions may be unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. That's good. True change rarely begins with comfort. Transformation starts at the fault lines, where the ground shakes, where certainty breaks, where we meet the unexplained and decide, gently, to lean in. Expect to meet old ideas in new forms. Expect to find yourself pausing, wondering, perhaps even laughing at the tricks your mind can play. Tonight, the most profound mysteries won't always come with explanations. They'll arrive with a sense of awe, a widening of perspective, and the quiet power that comes from knowing you are always more than the stories you tell yourself. As you listen, ask yourself, not with pressure but with kindness, where do my patterns keep me safe and where do they keep me small? Where have I mistaken the comfort of repetition for the adventure of discovery? Where in my life does clarity feel like a cage? We're about to unlock a series of doors, one after another. Some may open onto familiar landscapes. Others may reveal horizons you've never considered. You are not alone here. You are part of a community of listeners, all resting in the same gentle paradox: the desire to know and the wisdom to let go. Feel free to share where you're tuning in from or how you're feeling tonight, in the comments or with a friend. This is your invitation to relax, to reflect, to let the outer world soften for a little while, and to treat your curiosity with tenderness. Remember, there's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix. This isn't about self-optimization, but self-acceptance. Let the journey unfold as it will, and notice what stirs in you. Why does every breakthrough feel like a dead end in disguise? What if your moments of clarity are actually perfect traps, designed to keep you from ever seeing what's really out there? Certainty wears many faces, but none of them ever seem to smile for long. It's the answer that silences the question, the moment you stop looking because you believe you've found what matters. But underneath its surface, certainty is a shifting mask. One that often leaves you standing at the threshold of understanding, only to realize the door leads right back to where you started. Every time the mind seizes upon a new explanation, there's a ripple of satisfaction, a sense of arrival. The pattern fits, the data lines up, the meaning snaps into focus like the last piece in a puzzle. Yet, just as the picture resolves, a subtle tension creeps in. The thrill of arrival fades, replaced by a gnawing suspicion. Isn't this too easy? Too neat? Is it possible that every conclusion is just a new form of blindness? Meaning is seductive because it promises closure. It promises to quiet the noise, to end the search. But the world and the mind are not built for closure. They pulse with ambiguity, contradiction, and endless beginnings. The illusion of having figured it out is often the prelude to stagnation, a full stop that disguises itself as a destination. Pause and feel the resonance of this question. Why does every breakthrough feel like a dead end in disguise? Trace the shape of your own revelations. Each time you felt you had finally seen through the fog, only to discover that clarity itself had become the new obstacle. This is the mirage of meaning, the tendency for every answer to become its own unexamined dogma, for every solved puzzle to become a new set of walls. Consider the ancient paradoxes, those riddles that refuse to resolve. The more you chase the answer, the farther it recedes. Each time you grasp at meaning, the universe grows more complex, not less. This is no accident. It is the signature of a reality that cannot be tamed by tidy explanations. And yet, the mind keeps reaching, desperate for something solid to stand on. In this endless search, the patterns you cling to most tightly are the ones most likely to mislead. Certainty does not set you free. It lulls you to sleep. It makes you believe that the work is finished, that you have reached the summit, only to discover that you have simply climbed inside a new kind of enclosure, one whose bars are made of your own convictions. There's a quiet danger in feeling certain. The more convinced you are, the less you question. The less you question, the more invisible your limitations become. The boundaries of understanding are not marked by what you know, but by what you refuse to doubt. In this way, certainty is a perfect trap. It rewards you for stopping, for resting in comfort, for building a home inside a mirage. The world is full of stories that end with, and then everything made sense. But this is a fairy tale that reality rarely tells. For every tidy conclusion, 1,000 complications wait in the wings. The quantum world itself laughs at the notion of fixed meaning. Nothing can be pinned down, nothing can be finally decided. Every answer collapses, opening up new questions that weren't visible before. So why does certainty feel so convincing? Why does it offer such relief, even as it quietly erodes your ability to see what's next? The answer lies in the mind's deepest habits, the drive to organize chaos, to recognize patterns, to make the unknown manageable. Certainty is comfort food for the intellect, a lullaby that soothes away anxiety at the cost of genuine discovery. Every time you reach for an answer, pause and ask, is this the end, or just another beginning? Is the relief you feel a sign of truth, or a symptom of settling? Does the clarity you crave serve as a bridge to the next question, or a wall that blocks the view beyond? Reflect on the moments when meaning seemed to resolve everything. Did they last, or did they fade, replaced by a deeper hunger, a sense that something crucial was still out of reach? The cycle repeats, endlessly: pursuit, breakthrough, relief, then unease. Certainty offers rest, but never for long. The mind is too restless, too alive, to settle for comfort forever. Some philosophies celebrate doubt as a virtue, and for good reason. Doubt is a door that never closes. It lets in the light, the air, the possibility of change. Certainty, in contrast, is a sealed chamber, airless and quiet. It whispers that you've arrived, but in truth, you've only stopped moving. The journey is always in the tension, never in the arrival. Let yourself rest in the strangeness of not knowing. Let uncertainty become a kind of gentle ground, soft, fertile, alive with possibility. When you notice the urge to rush toward the next answer, slow down. Notice how each conclusion arrives dressed as a friend, but often behaves like a warden. The mirage of meaning is persistent because it feels good. It scratches an itch, but as soon as you trust it, you become blind to its limits. This blindness isn't a flaw. It's a feature of the mind's need for certainty. But to see beyond it, you must learn to notice the moment when satisfaction turns to stasis. There's a universe of potential waiting in the unresolved, the incomplete, the ambiguous. The quantum world teaches that every possibility exists, shimmering, until observed. The act of seeing collapses the wave, fixes the outcome, creates a story. But that story, however comforting, is only one thread in an endless tapestry. The richness lies in all the stories not told, all the meanings left unexplored. Certainty may soothe, but it also shrinks the world. Each time you accept an answer, 1,000 new questions fade from view. The cost of closure is the death of curiosity, a trade that rarely serves the spirit of growth. This is the real mirage, the sense that meaning can be captured, held, preserved. Meaning is not a fixed point, but a horizon that shifts with every step. The farther you travel, the more the landscape changes, and the less sense it makes to cling to any single interpretation. Rest here in this in-between. Let the urge for closure quieten. Embrace the beauty of the unresolved, the potential in every unanswered question. The mind is most alive when it is searching, wandering, wondering. Certainty is a pause, not a home. Why does every breakthrough feel like a dead end in disguise? Because the act of figuring it out is always incomplete. The most profound discoveries are those that open new mysteries, rather than close the case. Meaning flickers, wavers, changes shape. Allow yourself to see the allure of certainty and to recognize its limits. Hold your answers loosely and stay alert to the places where clarity feels too comfortable, too final. As you rest in this awareness, a new paradox appears on the horizon, a contradiction that refuses to let go. Next, we will pull at the threads of progress itself and find that acceleration does not always mean escape. You finally spot the trap. So why does escape only speed up your spiral? If you're moving so fast, why does everything still look the same? What if acceleration is just the illusion of evolution? Progress, on the surface, is a captivating force. It's the momentum that animates your mornings, the fuel for ambition, the drumbeat that promises a future better than the past. But there's a contradiction hidden in its heart, a riddle that echoes with every effort to move forward. Why, even as you accelerate, do you so often find yourself circling back to the same starting point, revisiting the same puzzles, asking the same questions in new disguises? Take a gentle moment to observe the cycle, the excitement of starting something new, the satisfaction of each small win, the rush of momentum. Yet, in the hush between milestones, a peculiar emptiness often waits. A sense that, no matter how fast you run, the landscape never truly changes. Progress seduces you with the promise of escape, but the boundaries of the maze remain eerily familiar. It's easy to measure life by achievements, by boxes ticked and goals attained. But beneath each milestone, the terrain of meaning can remain stubbornly unchanged. A new job, a new relationship, a new practice. Each feels, for a time, like a break from the old pattern. But too soon, the shadows lengthen, and you realize you're navigating the same emotional landscapes, meeting the same challenges dressed in different clothes. Progress can be relentless, demanding more speed, more output, more evolution. Yet acceleration is not always movement. Sometimes it is merely the illusion of change, a treadmill disguised as a racetrack. The scenery rushes by, but the core remains unmoved. There's a haunting quality to this repetition. The faster you go, the more you long for arrival, for the breakthrough that will finally shatter the loop. But with each turn, the scenery repeats. The questions persist. The spiral tightens, and still you run, compelled by the hope that this time will be different. This paradox is not a flaw, it is a law of perception. Progress is often measured by what is most easily seen, most readily counted. But the deep currents of transformation move quietly, beneath the surface, in places metrics cannot reach. The rush for visible change can blind you to the subtle revolutions that unfold only in stillness. Pause and notice the urge to move faster. The world rewards momentum, praises hustle, idolizes those who never stop. Yet, speed can become a cloak for avoidance, a way of fleeing discomfort, a distraction from the questions that resist quick answers. The spiral accelerates, not toward freedom, but away from the silent truths waiting in the unmoving center. Ask yourself, when have you mistaken motion for transformation? When has progress become a way to avoid what matters most? Sometimes, the effort to escape the pattern only strengthens its grip, drawing the spiral tighter with every turn. There's an old wisdom in recognizing the futility of endless striving. The universe itself pulses in cycles, not straight lines. Day follows night, seasons turn, planets revolve, and even galaxies spin in loops. Linear progress is a comforting myth. Reality favors the spiral, the return, the echo. This does not mean that growth is impossible or that striving is meaningless. It means that true change often requires stepping off the treadmill, questioning the very nature of the race. The real paradox is that sometimes slowing down, allowing stillness, embracing uncertainty, unlocks transformations that speed alone can never reach. Consider the roots of the word evolution. It means to unfold, not to rush, not to escape, but to reveal what is already waiting within. The quantum world, too, moves in pulses, waves, and cycles. Nothing is lost. Everything is transformed, revisited, renewed. Acceleration can be exhilarating, but if it never brings you closer to what matters, what is its true cost? When the landscape refuses to change, no matter how fast you run, perhaps the change needed is not outward, but inward. The spiral becomes a mirror, reflecting the patterns you carry with you, the stories you repeat without realizing. Gently consider the possibility that progress is not about conquering new territory, but about seeing the old ground with new eyes. The breakthrough you seek may not lie in the distance, but in the willingness to pause, to listen, to question the assumption that speed equals escape. This is the paradox. The harder you try to break free, the tighter the spiral becomes. Every act of resistance weaves you deeper into the pattern you are trying to outrun. The mind is a cunning architect, building new mazes from the ruins of the old. The more urgent the escape, the more elaborate the trap. Progress, then, is both a gift and a riddle. Calls you forward, but asks you to question the path. It offers hope, but demands humility. The true revolution may come not from outrunning the past, but from seeing it clearly, without flinching, without fleeing. Allow yourself the grace to slow down, to rest, to notice the patterns that persist beneath the rush of change. Ask, softly, what am I running from? What am I running toward? Whose definition of progress am I serving? The answers may not come quickly, but their presence changes everything. As you ponder these questions, a new contradiction appears. Progress, it seems, is bounded, fenced in by forces you rarely notice. The next turn in the spiral reveals a deeper mystery. If progress is a lie, who's setting the boundaries of your reality? What if your most urgent questions are the ones you're forbidden to ask? Who profits when you stop looking? Curiosity is a spark, a quiet flicker in the mind that refuses to settle. It's the force that pulls you forward, the gentle unrest that refuses to accept easy answers. But not all questions are created equal. Some are welcomed, encouraged, even rewarded. Others are quietly pushed aside, met with silence, discomfort, or even fear. The mind learns, over time, to tiptoe around certain topics, to color within the lines drawn by invisible hands. Invisible fences are everywhere, often so subtle you forget they exist. These boundaries shape your understanding, limit your options, and determine which possibilities you ever dare to consider. They are the silent agreements that whisper, "Don't go there." They are the reflexes that steer you away from discomfort, controversy, or danger. Pause and reflect on the last time you wanted to ask a difficult question, but hesitated. The boundaries are not always external. Often, they are woven into the very fabric of your thoughts. Whose voice was it that told you not to look too closely, not to question too much, not to risk the safety of the known? Reality is not simply discovered. It is curated. The patterns you see are filtered by countless influences: culture, authority, education, technology, even your own habits. Every lens sharpens some details and blurs others. The questions you are encouraged to ask become the walls of your intellectual world. Ask yourself, who decides which questions are worth asking? Who benefits when certain topics are off limits? The uncomfortable truth is that the boundaries of curiosity are rarely chosen by the seeker. They are enforced by those who profit from the status quo, whether they are external authorities or the quiet guardians of your own fear. The universe is not short on mysteries, but it is lavish in its efforts to keep you comfortable. Comfort, after all, is a powerful form of control. It lulls you into acceptance, persuades you that the world is tidy, safe, and already understood. But the greatest leaps of understanding always begin at the edges, at the fault lines where certainty falters, and forbidden questions begin to glow. Consider the histories of science, art, and philosophy. The most transformative ideas were born at the margins, in the places where curiosity refused to obey the rules. Yet, for every celebrated breakthrough, there are countless questions that were never asked, possibilities never explored, because the boundaries were drawn too tightly. Invisible fences are not static. They shift and adapt. What is forbidden today may be welcome tomorrow, and vice versa. But their effect is always the same. They narrow your field of vision, quiet your hunger for truth, and reward you for staying safely inside the lines. The mind is trained to avoid discomfort, to seek the path of least resistance. The questions that matter most are often those that feel dangerous, destabilizing, or impossible to answer. These are the questions that shiver in the dark corners, waiting for the courage to bring them into the light. Pause here. Notice where your curiosity falters. What topics feel off-limits, even in your own private thoughts? Who planted those boundaries? What would it cost to cross them? The true shape of your reality is revealed not by the answers you collect, but by the questions you're allowed to ask. The most urgent questions are often the most suppressed. The patterns you notice are bounded by a vast, unseen architecture of should and must not. Invisible fences keep you safe, but they also keep you small. They promise security, but at the price of possibility. The act of questioning is always a risk, a movement toward the unknown, a challenge to the authority of the familiar. The mind resists, clinging to what is known, defending the boundaries with logic, fear, or habit. Yet, it is only at the edges where the fences wobble and blur that true transformation occurs. The mind that never trespasses remains forever captive to someone else's map. Growth requires the courage to cross lines, to wander, to trespass in search of deeper truths. Who profits when you stop looking? The answer is rarely obvious. Sometimes it is an institution, a tradition, a belief system. Sometimes it is the part of yourself that dreads uncertainty, that seeks comfort in the known. The cost of curiosity is real. Discomfort, conflict, even exile from the community of the satisfied. But the reward is freedom, a wider horizon, a reality that expands with every forbidden question you dare to ask. Invisible fences are not invincible. They can be traced, questioned, even dismantled. The first step is noticing where they exist. Pay attention to the places in conversation, in thought, in study, where the air grows thin and the room goes quiet. These are the boundaries worth testing. Curiosity is an act of rebellion, a refusal to accept someone else's limits. It is the spark that leaps the fence, that risks the unknown for the promise of a broader view. The universe rewards the trespasser with glimpses of mysteries that the obedient never see. There is no map for crossing invisible fences, no guarantee of safety or applause. The only certainty is that every breakthrough lies on the other side of discomfort, and every fence is a chance to choose. Comfort or curiosity, safety or expansion. Rest with these questions. Let the unease settle without rushing to resolve it. The world you know is bounded not by reality itself, but by the fences you have learned to respect. Now you have sensed the invisible hands that shape your curiosity. Next, we will question the very source of your certainty, as memory itself shimmers and slips, never quite what it claims to be. If someone else draws your lines, can you even trust your own memories? What if the moments you rely on most never existed, except as echoes of a narrative you didn't write? Memory is the silent author of your identity, stitching together the story you call self. Every experience, every lesson, every joy and pain is woven into an ever-expanding tapestry. It's easy to trust the pictures your mind paints. The first day at school, the touch of a hand, the words that changed your path. But the deeper you look, the more those images begin to shimmer, to shift, to reveal cracks in their foundations. Consider the unease that comes when two people remember the same moment in utterly different ways. Both are certain, both would stake everything on their version, and yet the past has become an argument rather than a shared truth. You learn, over time, to defend your memories, to polish them, to use them as anchors when life feels adrift. But what if the anchor was dropped in sand, not stone? Memory is not a recording device. It's a living process, always editing, always rewriting. Each time you recall an event, the mind subtly alters it, emphasizing what matters now, softening what's too raw, or sometimes inventing entirely new details that fit the story you wish were true. The more often you visit a memory, the further it drifts from its original shape, until what you recall may bear only the faintest resemblance to what actually happened. There is an unsettling beauty in this plasticity. Memory protects you, comforts you, allows you to grow and change without being held captive by old wounds. But it also betrays you, convincing you that what you know is beyond doubt, that your version is the real one, that the past is a foundation instead of a shifting tide. Pause for a moment and try to recall a formative event, something you've told yourself many times. Watch as details flicker. Was it raining or sunny? Was she laughing or silent? Did you say that, or did you only wish you had? The mind resists uncertainty. It fills gaps with guesses, smooths rough edges with fantasy, and declares with quiet confidence, "This is how it was." Who, then, is the real author of your memories? Every story you tell is built on countless influences. Family, culture, friends, media, and the stories you inherited without question. Even your earliest recollections are tangled with hints and echoes from those who shaped you. Memory is social, contagious, shaped as much by the narratives around you as by any lived experience. What does it mean, then, to trust your own mind? Certainty becomes a fragile shield. You rely on memory to define who you are, but that very reliance can become a prison. A story written by unseen hands, repeated so often that questioning it feels like self-betrayal. Sometimes you realize that a cherished memory never happened at all. Perhaps you remember meeting someone you never met, or being present at an event you only heard described. The confidence feels the same as with real experiences, and yet there is a hollow ring if you listen closely. The mind, it seems, values narrative coherence over truth. These glitches aren't rare. They are fundamental to how memory works. The mind is designed for meaning, not accuracy. It weaves together fragments, guesses, and wishes into a seamless fabric, then presents it as reality. You are the hero of your own epic, but the script is ever-changing. sometimes written by others, sometimes rewritten by your own hopes and fears. What does this mean for the stories you use to guide your choices? When you argue, when you love, when you forgive or resent, you are negotiating not with what happened, but with your mind's latest draft of the past. The present is built on 1,000 shifting stories, some true, some half-true, some never true at all. Is this a reason to despair? Or is it an invitation to question, to hold your memories gently, to recognize their power and their limits? The quantum world offers no stable ground. Particles flicker, possibilities multiply, and certainty is always provisional. Memory, too, refuses to be pinned down. It is fluid, alive, and untrustworthy. You have built your life on what you know, but knowledge, when examined, turns to mist. Even as you seek answers, the ground beneath you shifts. This is not a flaw, but a feature of being alive, a warning that no story is final, no truth unchanging. Let yourself feel the tension between what you remember and what is real. There is no comfort in clinging too tightly, no wisdom in pretending your mind is infallible. Growth lies in humility, in the willingness to ask, again and again, is this really true? Or is it simply what I need to believe? If someone else draws your lines, can you even trust your own memories? If the moments you rely on most never existed, except as echoes of a narrative you didn't write, how much of your life is truly your own? This question is both disturbing and liberating. The prison of memory is a cage of your own making, and its keys are everywhere. Curiosity, skepticism, compassion, and the freedom to question even your most cherished certainties. Memory is a map, not the territory. It is a guide, not a decree. The stories you tell can change, and with them, so can you. The past is never as fixed as you want it to be, nor as fragile as it seems. As you rest in this uncertainty, notice what changes in you. The stories that once seemed ironclad now flicker, shimmer, become more complex. You are not bound by what you remember. You are free to notice what has been left out, what was never there, what still waits to be discovered. Now you have touched the edges of memory's illusions. Next, we will turn our gaze from the past to the present and ask, if your mind can betray you, what about your eyes? What if the world's most important patterns are always hidden just beyond your field of view, deliberately escaping detection, quietly shaping everything you think you see? If your memories can't be trusted, what about your eyes? What if the most important pattern is always just outside your field of view, deliberately hiding where you refuse to look? Sight is often considered the most reliable of senses. You trust your eyes to show you the world as it is, to provide unmediated access to reality. But even vision, for all its clarity, is woven with omissions. The mind fills in gaps, smooths over inconsistencies, and renders invisible that which it deems unnecessary or unsafe. Every day, you move through a world shaped as much by your attention as by objective fact. The mind is selective, filtering an overwhelming flood of data into a manageable stream. What you see is not the world, but a carefully curated highlight reel, constructed for efficiency, safety, and comfort. There is a physical blind spot in every eye, a place where the optic nerve exits the retina, leaving a patch with no photoreceptors. The brain fills this gap so perfectly that you rarely notice. But there are deeper blind spots, too cognitive, emotional, existential. These are the truths you are trained not to see, the questions you never learned to ask, the possibilities that flicker just out of reach. Consider how you notice certain patterns, but not others. Faces in clouds, order in chaos, meaning in coincidence. Yet, there are patterns that elude you entirely, that remain hidden not because they are subtle, but because you are not prepared or permitted to see them. The invisible is not the absence of data, but the absence of attention. Why does this matter? Because the patterns that shape your life most powerfully are often those you never recognize. The habits that repeat, the emotions that cycle, the beliefs that drive you, these run beneath awareness, guiding your choices without ever rising to the surface. The mirror is a perfect metaphor. When you look, you see a familiar face, but mirrors are partial. They reflect only what stands before them, never what lies behind. Your field of view is always limited, always cropped by the boundaries of perception and expectation. What hides in the periphery, in the shadows where you never glance? What possibilities are quietly waiting, never noticed, never named? The world is far vaster than your map of it, and every map is incomplete. The quantum world reminds you that observation is not passive. To look is to change what is seen. Yet, even in looking, you are constrained. Your senses, your culture, your story all determine what registers as real and what slips away, unremarked. This is not a call to paranoia, but to wonder. The recognition that there is always more to see, that every certainty hides a margin, every fact a field of mystery. The blind spot is not a flaw. It is a horizon, a place where growth begins. What would it mean to look for what you never expect? To invite discomfort, to question not only what you know, but what you notice. The most profound shifts often occur when you turn, gently, toward the edge of vision, where assumptions thin and possibility returns. Sometimes the pattern hides because it is painful, because to notice it would disrupt your story. Sometimes it hides because it is so deeply embedded in the culture that it has become invisible to all. Sometimes it is simply too strange, too radical, too wonderful to fit into the world you know. You cannot remove all your blind spots, but you can become curious about them. You can treat every certainty as provisional, every perception as partial. You can ask, with humility, what am I missing? What lies just outside my field of view? Growth begins at the boundaries. The courage to question, to look again, to welcome the unknown. This is the path out of every self-made prison. The patterns you cannot see control you most, but the act of searching, of questioning, weakens their grip. In the mirror, see not only the familiar, but the unknown. Let every glance remind you that reality is always more than you can hold, that every story is incomplete. This is not a failure. It is the gift of consciousness, to be forever reaching, forever discovering, forever surprised. Rest in the awareness of your own blind spots. They are invitations, not failures. Every unseen pattern is a doorway to a wider world. Now you have sensed the power of what lies just outside your field of view. Next, we will turn the lens and ask a more unsettling question. Who is watching whom? Is it possible that you are not the observer, but the observed? That the patterns you seek are not hiding from you, but watching, measuring, and shaping you in return? If you're blind to your own blind spots, who's watching who? What if the patterns aren't just hiding from you, but using you, collecting data every time you look away? There's a quiet comfort in believing you are the observer, that your gaze is sovereign and your attention is free. Every moment spent seeking patterns, decoding signals, and piecing together meaning seems to reinforce this role, the mind as analyst, explorer, master of its domain. Yet, in the shadows of this certainty, a new suspicion begins to stir. What if you are not just the observer, but also the observed? What if every question you ask is being measured, every blind spot mapped, every action recorded, not for your benefit, but for the design of an experiment in which you are the subject? Consider how the act of observing always alters what is observed. In the quantum world, the observer's presence collapses probabilities into outcomes. The universe is not a static painting, but a living process that responds to every glance. But in this strange interplay, who or what is watching you? Who is tracing the arc of your curiosity, learning your habits, and shaping what you see next? The unsettling truth is that patterns are not passive. They adapt. They respond. As you search for them, they search for you. The beliefs you hold most dearly, the habits you repeat most faithfully, the fears you try hardest to avoid. These are the footprints you leave behind, the trails that reveal more about you than you ever intended. Pause and notice the subtle feedback loops in your life. Every time you avoid a difficult question, every time you rush to an easy answer, every time you settle for the comfort of old routines, you are teaching the pattern how to persist. The more you resist, the more it learns. The blind spot becomes a vantage point, a place from which the pattern can see you, even as you struggle to see it. This is not simply a metaphor. Modern life is filled with systems that learn from you. Algorithms adapt to your preferences, adjust to your biases, and anticipate your needs. Each choice you make, each pause, each hesitation is logged, analyzed, and used to shape your future options. What began as an innocent search for meaning has become a complex dance, with you at the center and the pattern in control. Ask yourself, how many of your choices are truly your own? When you scroll, when you click, when you speak, or even think, who is benefiting from your curiosity? In this world of invisible surveillance, you are no longer just a participant. You are a data point, a variable in an ongoing experiment whose hypothesis is always shifting. There's a strange liberation in acknowledging this. The recognition that you are watched need not inspire paranoia, but wonder, a new humility before the forces that shape experience. You are not omniscient. You are not immune to influence. You are a living node in a network of observers, each changing the other in ways no single mind can predict. The patterns that watch back are not always technological. Sometimes they are psychological, internalized voices, inherited scripts, subtle pressures from family, culture, and history. Every expectation, every norm, every unspoken rule you obey is a pattern that persists by watching you, learning how to keep its hold. How do you respond when you realize you're being observed? Do you become more cautious, more authentic, more rebellious? The awareness of being watched changes everything. It calls you to greater presence, to a more honest appraisal of what you want and why you want it. The illusion of privacy is powerful, but ultimately false. Every thought you think leaves a trace. Every emotion ripples out. Every intention interacts with the world in ways that cannot be fully hidden or controlled. The boundaries between self and other, between watcher and watched, blur until it becomes impossible to say who is directing whom. This realization can unsettle, even frighten, but it can also awaken a deeper sense of agency. If you are part of the experiment, you are also part of the process. Your responses, your resistance, your curiosity become part of the pattern's evolution. You are both subject and co-creator. Consider the possibility that every blind spot you have is not simply a gap, but a signal, an invitation for the pattern to adapt, to learn, to grow alongside you. Your limitations do not merely restrict you. They reveal the edges of what the pattern itself can know. Each act of seeing, each moment of awareness, is a moment of change for both you and the world that watches. This interplay is not a game to be won or lost, but a relationship to be navigated. The more conscious you become of the pattern's gaze, the more power you have to choose how you respond. Not with fear, but with a gentle curiosity about the dance itself. Who is the experimenter? Who is the subject? These questions lose meaning at the quantum edge, where roles reverse and boundaries dissolve. The truth is not a fixed point, but a process. A living, shifting, ever-adapting interaction that invites you to remain awake. Now you have begun to sense the presence of patterns that watch and adapt. Next, we will widen the lens and ask a disturbing question. If you are part of the experiment, how did everyone around you catch the same disease? Why do crowds hallucinate in sync, sharing the same comfort, while missing the same impossible truth? If you're the experiment, how did everyone catch the same disease? Why do crowds hallucinate in sync, sharing the same comfort, while missing the same impossible truth? Certainty, like a gentle fog, blankets the collective mind. It drifts through communities, cultures, nations, and ages, soothing, uniting, and blinding in equal measure. There is a peculiar comfort in agreement, in the feeling that everyone sees what you see, believes what you believe, wants what you want. Yet, the comfort itself is suspect. When so many minds move in lockstep, when so many voices echo the same refrain, a deeper question surfaces. Are you all seeing reality, or just sharing the same hallucination? Crowds have power. There is safety in numbers, validation in consensus. But certainty spreads not by proof, but by contagion. Ideas become viral, not because they are true, but because they are familiar, comforting, or necessary for belonging. The mind, so eager for stability, catches certainty like a fever, transmitting it from one person to another without pause to question the source. Think of the times when everyone around you knew something to be true, when doubt seemed not only unnecessary, but almost dangerous. The stories of history are littered with shared illusions. The world is flat. The sun circles the earth. Certain people are less human than others. Each was accepted as fact, not because of evidence, but because of the warmth and safety of agreement. Pause and consider, how many of your own certainties were inherited, not chosen? Which beliefs came to you as gifts? Which as warnings? Which as silent conditions for acceptance? The virus of certainty does not announce itself. It works in the background, blending personal comfort with collective identity, making it nearly impossible to tell where your beliefs end and someone else's begin. This is not an accusation, but a revelation. The mind is built for connection, for shared experience. It finds reality in the eyes of others, reassurance in the chorus of agreement. But crowds, for all their wisdom, can be blind together. When everyone sees the same illusion, the illusion becomes invisible. It becomes reality. Why does this happen? Because the cost of disagreement is high. To question the shared story is to risk exile, ridicule, or loss of status. The comfort of the group outweighs the discomfort of doubt. Certainty, once viral, becomes its own justification. It does not need evidence. It has numbers. Yet, every consensus hides a blind spot, a truth that cannot be spoken, a possibility that must remain unimagined. The certainty virus is most powerful when it is invisible, when it no longer feels like a belief but simply the way things are. What truths, then, are missing from your shared reality? What questions have gone unasked, not because they are unthinkable, but because everyone has agreed to stop thinking them? The collective mind, for all its power, is prone to hallucinate in sync, missing the very truths it most needs to see. This is not a failure of intelligence, but of courage. To break the spell of certainty requires a willingness to stand alone, to see what others cannot or will not see. It means risking the comfort of the group for the possibility of a deeper, richer truth. Notice the places in your own life where the crowd's belief feels inescapable, where disagreement seems not only difficult but impossible. These are the places where the certainty virus is most virulent. These are also the places where true vision is most urgently needed. The quantum world offers little comfort here. It shows that reality is always more ambiguous, more mysterious, more open than the consensus allows. Every certainty, no matter how viral, is provisional. Every belief is a bet, a risk, a leap of faith. What, then, is the antidote? Not cynicism, but curiosity. Not isolation, but the courage to ask the questions the crowd has forgotten. The truth is rarely found in the center of the herd. It waits at the margins, in the doubts and dreams of those willing to look again. The most impossible truths are often the simplest, hiding in plain sight, masked by the comfort of agreement. The comfort is real, but so is the blindness. To wake from the shared illusion is to see not only the world anew, but yourself. As you reflect on the power of collective certainty, a new contradiction stirs. If the illusion is shared, can you even trust consensus? Next, we will examine the ground beneath every argument and every choice, and ask, what if both sides of the coin are wrong? What if every side you take was always designed to keep you from seeing a third option that shouldn't exist? If the illusion is shared, can you even trust consensus? What if every argument, every choice, every side you take was always designed to keep you from seeing a third option that shouldn't exist? Every day you are offered a choice, this or that, yes or no, right or wrong. The mind craves these binaries, these crisp lines in the sand. Every argument splits the world in two, inviting you to pick a side, to stake your identity on a position, to defend your corner as if the entire universe hangs in the balance. But beneath this split, a deeper pattern pulses. Each side of the coin is defined by the other. Every argument is a mirror, each position a reflection. In fighting for one truth, you make the other more real. The dance of opposition gives each side its shape, its urgency, its meaning. But the coin itself, the field that holds both sides, remains hidden, almost taboo. Pause here and sense the strange discomfort that comes with not choosing. The world urges you to pick, to align, to belong. The discomfort is a pressure, subtle but unyielding. It is easier to join a side, to find community in agreement or even in opposition, than to admit that both are merely shadows of something larger, stranger, and unresolved. Ask yourself, when have you been presented with only two options, only to realize later that the very frame of the question was the real prison? The third possibility, the one that dissolves the binary, that reveals the coin and not just its faces, is rarely named, rarely permitted. Consider the endless debates that shape society. They rage on, each side growing more convinced, more certain, more entrenched. Yet, solutions never arrive. Instead, the ground trembles beneath their feet, a silent fault line widening as the shouting grows. The paradox is simple and devastating. Every argument is a trap, and every side you take strengthens the bars. This is the quantum fault line, the place where either slash or shatters and both slash and begins to flicker. The world, at its deepest level, refuses the comfort of binary thinking. Particles exist in superposition, waves and points at once, choices that are both made and unmade. To choose is to collapse the field, to turn infinite possibility into finite certainty. And yet, the patterns of argument persist. You are drawn to take sides, to declare, to judge. The cost of refusing to choose is social as well as personal. The world is impatient with those who refuse to pick a team, but the price of certainty is blindness, and the reward for seeing both sides is often exile. There is an old wisdom in standing at the fault line, refusing to be rushed into certainty. Here, new possibilities emerge. The third option, the impossible answer, the overlooked truth, all become visible for a moment, shivering at the edge of perception. Every argument is a doorway, not a wall. The conflict is not a dead end, but an invitation to look beyond the frame. If you can step outside the dance of opposition, even for a breath, you catch a glimpse of the field from which both sides emerge. A reality wider than the war, deeper than the disagreement. This is not neutrality, not fence-sitting, not indecision. It is a radical act of imagination, to see that both sides are incomplete, and that their very opposition is what keeps you from discovering what lies beneath. The world is not divided by nature, but by habit, by story, by the patterns you are trained to see. Ask gently, who benefits from your loyalty to one side or the other? What possibilities are made impossible by the very structure of the debate? Every argument consumes energy, attention, identity. The more you invest, the less you are able to imagine anything else. There is a kind of magic in letting go of the need to win, in seeing the dance of opposites for what it is: a theater, a game, a distraction. The third possibility, the quantum leap, appears when you refuse to play, when you allow the coin to turn in your palm and notice its edge, its weight, its hidden inscriptions. What is lost when you pick a side? What is gained when you let the argument pass through you, neither claiming nor rejecting, but witnessing? The field is always wider than its boundaries, the pattern always richer than its parts. Every argument has a silent partner, the option not given, the truth not spoken, the possibility that undoes the entire question. The binary is never the full story. The world, in its fullness, laughs at either slash or. Next time you feel the urge to declare, to judge, to fight for one side against another, pause. Listen for the rumble beneath your feet. The quantum fault line is not a weakness, but a sign of deeper strength, a place where the impossible can be imagined, where the argument itself can be left behind. Rest here in the discomfort of not choosing. Notice the space that opens. Here, reality is not divided, but whole. The impossible third option is not a solution, but an invitation. Having stood at the edge of the fault line, a new tension surfaces, one born not of nature, but of code, of algorithm, of invisible architecture. Next, we will examine the silent revolution of the machines and question: if reality is a rigged game, when did you start playing by someone else's code? What if the very act of searching is feeding an algorithm that anticipates and reinforces your next mistake? If reality is a rigged game, when did you start playing by someone else's code? What if the very act of searching is feeding an algorithm that anticipates and reinforces your next mistake? There was a time when questions felt free, when searching was an act of wonder, a walk through a limitless landscape of possibility. Now, your every step is watched, every curiosity measured, every pause and click and scroll absorbed by silent architectures of code. What began as a tool has become a cage, invisible yet inescapable. Pause and notice. The patterns you see are not just the ones you seek, but the ones shown to you. The algorithm learns quickly. It watches what you notice, predicts what you want, and subtly shapes the options you believe are yours to choose. What you see becomes what you believe. What you believe becomes what you search for. What you search for becomes what the algorithm shows you. The loop closes tighter and tighter. Each act of curiosity becomes another data point, another entry in the record. The more you search, the more you are known, not in your fullness, but in the statistical shadows you cast. Your desires, fears, dreams, and distractions are mapped, analyzed, and used to build a version of reality tailored to your blind spots. Who benefits from this architecture? Whose code determines what you are shown and what is hidden? The world is filtered, pre-chewed, and served up to you in endless scrolls of confirmation. Every like, every swipe, every you may also like is a quiet nudge away from unpredictability toward a reality that feels familiar and safe, yet grows narrower with every interaction. Ask yourself, how much of what you discover is truly discovered, and how much is offered, arranged, curated by unseen hands? The algorithm does not want you to wander, to stray, to step outside its predictions. It is built to minimize surprise, to flatten contradiction, to keep you circling inside the limits of what can be measured. The illusion is subtle. You believe you are searching, but you are also being searched. The questions you type, the answers you accept, the content you consume, all become part of the algorithm's evolving model of you. And the more it learns, the more predictable you become. Predictability is profitable, but it is also perilous. The code rewards what is familiar, what is easy, what is safe. It encourages the repetition of patterns, the reinforcement of biases, the silencing of doubts. The more you conform to the algorithm's expectations, the harder it becomes to imagine anything else. There is a chilling genius to this design. The code anticipates your blind spots, not by accident, but by intention. It knows where you hesitate, where you linger, where you turn away. It rewards your distractions, feeds your fears, comforts your certainties, and quietly deepens your limitations. What is lost in this process? The raw edge of discovery, the thrill of surprise, the humility of not knowing. When every answer is predicted, when every question is anticipated, the world grows smaller, less alive. The algorithm's revenge is not malice, but inertia. A relentless drift toward the known, the expected, the dull. Is escape possible? The first step is to notice the walls. The next is to question the architecture itself. Refuse to be predictable. Court surprise. Seek out what the algorithm hides. Disrupt the loop with questions that cannot be answered, with searches that break the model, with curiosity that refuses to be tamed. The code is not your enemy, but it is not your friend. It is a mirror, reflecting your habits back to you, reinforcing your patterns, rewarding your inertia. But a mirror can be broken or at least seen for what it is. What would it mean to search for what cannot be found, to crave what cannot be measured, to refuse what is offered and seek what is hidden? The mind is not an algorithm, no matter how much the world tries to make it one. You are not a sum of clicks and scrolls and searches, not a profile to be optimized. The cost of playing by someone else's code is invisibility, the erasure of the self behind layers of prediction. The reward for stepping outside the loop is possibility, a world alive with unpredictability, with edges that matter, with questions no algorithm can anticipate. Next, we will lean into the static, into the errors, into the haunted signals that flicker at the edge of perception. If you're trapped in an algorithm, why does the truth always show up as an error message? What if the secrets you crave are buried in the static, screaming in glitches you've been trained to ignore? If you're trapped in an algorithm, why does the truth always show up as an error message? What if the secrets you crave are buried in the static, screaming in glitches you've been trained to ignore? In a world engineered for clarity, it's tempting to seek the answer that makes the most sense, the message that is the cleanest, the path that is the straightest. Yet, the most profound truths rarely arrive in neatly labeled packages. They stutter, glitch, twist through static, whispered from the edges, pulsing behind the curtain of noise that most minds learn to filter out. You're told to trust the clear, to embrace the signal and discard the rest. But the haunted signal never follows the rules. Noise is not merely the backdrop to meaning, it is its co-creator. Every message worth hearing is entangled in a matrix of confusion, contradiction, and error. The clarity you crave is only possible because it rises from a sea of disorder. The algorithm, in its hunger for control, tries to silence the static. But silence is not the natural state. Life is noisy, layered, full of crosscurrents and conflicting signals. Notice how quickly you reject what doesn't fit your story. A word misspoken, a flash of déjà vu, a fragment of information that makes no sense. Your mind smooths it over, dismisses it as irrelevant. The algorithm does the same, tidying, cleaning, optimizing, always pushing you toward what is expected, what is easy. Yet, there's a cost to this relentless cleaning. Everything that doesn't fit, every strange hint or anomaly, is swept away. The haunted signal becomes a ghost story, unbelievable, ignored, lost. But what if the signal you most need is the one the system keeps deleting? What if the error, the static, the glitch is not a failure but a message from the edge, a call from a reality too complex, too raw, too alive to be domesticated by code? The universe, at its core, is messy. Quantum particles leap and vanish, waves interfere and collapse, patterns emerge from chaos, dissolve, and emerge again. The clean line, the perfect order, is always an approximation. A story told by the mind to soothe itself against the terror of ambiguity. The truth is in the noise, in the haunted signals that break the model, in the errors that refuse to be corrected. Think about the times you've ignored the impossible, the times you've deleted the anomaly to keep your story straight. Did a strange coincidence make you uncomfortable? Did a repeated number, an inexplicable sensation, a shiver of intuition slip past your guard? The haunted signal is persistent. It knocks at the door, flickers in the periphery, tugs at the edge of your awareness. Most are trained to ignore it. But what if it's the only thing that's real? There's an eerie beauty in the recognition that error messages matter. Every system, every story, every belief eventually confronts its limits. The errors accumulate, the signals degrade. At first, you try to repair, to restore order, to recover the lost clarity. But after a while, a new realization dawns. The error isn't something to fix, it's something to listen to. The haunted signal is a portal. It doesn't explain. It interrupts. It refuses comfort. It forces a new question. What am I not seeing, not hearing, not allowing? The mind, so trained to seek resolution, is tempted to dismiss the glitch as a failure. But the glitch is a gift, a trace of a truth too wild to fit the pattern. Think of the moments when everything seemed to go wrong, when the map failed, when the pattern broke, when the world revealed a crack in its surface. What slipped through in those moments? What did you learn when clarity was impossible, when noise drowned out the signal, when all you could do was listen to the chaos? Noise isn't just background. It's a reminder that the world is more alive, more unpredictable, more strange than any model can contain. The haunted signal is a call to humility. Every system breaks. Every belief is tested. Every algorithm fails. The static is not the enemy. It is the ground from which everything grows. This is why the truth so often arrives as an error message. Because it cannot be contained, because it cannot be anticipated, because it doesn't fit the code. The haunted signal is the trace of a deeper reality, a reality that will not be silenced, will not be simplified, will not be tamed. So listen differently. Seek out the haunted signals. Linger in the noise. Pay attention to the errors, the glitches, the things that don't belong. Let them disturb you. Let them disrupt your comfort. Let them invite you to a wider, wilder world. You've learned to follow the signal, to trust the clear, to seek the obvious. Now embrace the haunted. Learn to find meaning in the mess, to treat noise as a message, to see error as a doorway rather than a wall. When the truth arrives wrapped in noise, the real skill is not in filtering it out, but in knowing when to listen, when to pause, when to let the error rewrite your assumptions. The haunted signal is the only one that matters. Everything else is just static, distraction, comfort, safety. Rest in the static, in the error, in the haunted possibility that something true is always trying to reach you through the noise. Let yourself be unsettled. The universe is not a clean room. It is a haunted house, full of messages no algorithm can decode. Now you have traced the ghostly edge of error and static. Next, we will turn the world inside out, stepping into a place where nothing is quite as it seems, and ask, if the truth hides in noise, what if every error is actually the answer? What if the code wasn't wrong? You just read the punchline first and missed the joke. What if everything you believe is the mirror image of what's real? If the truth hides in noise, what if every error is actually the answer? What if the code wasn't wrong? You just read the punchline first and missed the joke. What if everything you believe is the mirror image of what's real? The familiar comfort of the world is built on direction. Causes lead to effects, questions have answers, jokes have punchlines that resolve the tension and close the story. But beneath this narrative order, another reality hums, a world where everything is reversible, where meaning runs in two directions, where the punchline arrives before the setup, and the answer is disguised as an error. Inversion is everywhere if you know how to look. Mirrors do not show you the world, but its opposite. Your right hand becomes your left, your reflection smiles back with your own face, but nothing is quite as it seems. What would happen if you lived in the mirror? What if the life you know is already a reflection, backwards, inside out, familiar yet fundamentally misunderstood? Take a breath and let this possibility sink in. What if the errors you dismissed were not mistakes, but clues? What if the code you thought was broken was simply being read in the wrong direction? The world rewards those who seek clarity, but clarity often comes at the cost of inversion. The refusal to notice what's hiding in plain sight, the refusal to play the joke backwards and find the punchline already delivered. Consider the quantum world, where particles are their own antiparticles, where time can run backwards, where the arrow of causality is never quite as straight as you want it to be. Every law has a loophole, every certainty its own undoing. What feels like a rule is often a riddle, a puzzle designed to be solved by reading it upside down. This is the final inversion. Every belief you hold, every conclusion you reach, every truth you claim is, in some way, the mirror image of a deeper, stranger reality. You think you see the world, but you are looking through layers of glass, bending the light, twisting the truth, missing the joke. The most unsettling realization comes when the pattern you followed, the answer you trusted, the story you believed is suddenly reversed. Everything makes sense, just not in the way you imagined. The punchline lands first, and you spend your life searching for the setup. The joke is on everyone, and everyone plays along. What does it mean to read reality backwards? To see the world not as it presents itself, but as it actually is, flipped, mirrored, transformed by your expectations. The mirror does not lie, but it never tells the whole truth. Your eyes, your memory, your certainty are all reflections. Useful, beautiful, but ultimately incomplete. The courage to embrace inversion is the courage to live without a fixed direction, to let meaning be born from contradiction, to see that every answer is also a question, every punchline an invitation to begin again. This is not confusion, it is liberation. The world is not broken. It is alive with reversals, jokes, surprises. Pay attention to the places where the story feels backwards, where the answer arrives before the question, where the world refuses to make sense in the way you want. These are the cracks in the mirror, the invitations to look again, to let go of certainty, to step into a reality where the joke is never on you. It's in you, around you, through you. Everything you believe is, in some sense, a mirror image of what's real. This is not a reason to despair, but to celebrate. The game is not to find the right answer, but to learn how to play with inversion, to find joy in the reversal, to accept that every code has two sides, every punchline two laughs. Notice how the pattern emerges. The joke lands, and then the setup arrives, and suddenly everything you thought you knew is new again. The final inversion is not the end, but a beginning. A door to a world where meaning is never settled, where the story never closes, where the truth is always, in some way, backwards. The world you see is not the only one. There is always another view, another direction, another inversion waiting. The mirror shows you what you missed, And in that missing, you find everything you need. You have learned to read backwards, to welcome the inversion, to celebrate the joke. Now, the only question that remains is this. What happens when you let the story remain unfinished? When you stop chasing answers and simply stand in the unresolved? If you step outside the need for answers, what impossible world might suddenly appear? Now that you know the pattern is incomplete, what do you do when there's nothing left to resolve? If you step outside the need for answers, what impossible world might suddenly appear? All patterns, even the most dazzling, eventually reveal their limits. The drive for resolution, the ache to finish the puzzle, close the loop, explain it all, is as natural as breathing. Yet here, at the very end of the labyrinth, a different kind of silence waits. The final door is not a wall or a prize or even a new riddle. It is the realization that the pattern was always unfinished, and that the demand for answers was only ever a shadow cast by your own longing. This is where the greatest tension lies, not in the pursuit of clarity, but in the act of releasing it. What remains when there is nothing left to solve? No certainty to chase, no comfort in the familiar repetitions of questions and solutions. The world is unfinished. You are unfinished. The universe itself is a half-told story, a sentence that never ends. Pause and feel the unfamiliar peace of not knowing. It is not the dullness of resignation, nor the paralysis of confusion, but the gentle, spacious permission to simply be. Every search you have made, every pattern you have followed, every paradox that has shaken your sense of reality, each has led you inevitably to the edge of explanation. Here, the horizon keeps moving. Here, the next step is not to leap, but to linger. You have learned to question everything. Your memories, your perceptions, the stories you inherited, the certainty of crowds, the seductions of clarity. You have unlearned the comfort of the binary, the urge to rush to the punchline, the reflex to accept only what fits and reject the noise. At every turn, the pattern slipped through your fingers, leaving a faint impression, a possibility, a suggestion, a ghost. Now, imagine the shape of your life with all the answers suspended. The world breathes differently. Meaning no longer arrives like a completed jigsaw but rises and falls, dances in the half-light, plays between what is seen and what is hidden. There is relief here, but also a challenge. The courage to remain open, undefended, incomplete. What happens when you stop looking for answers? The mind protests at first, conditioned by a lifetime of seeking, categorizing, labeling. But soon, a new faculty awakens. Attention without demand, presence without agenda, wonder without resolution. You begin to notice the richness in every pause, the fullness of every silence, the way each moment is already enough without a conclusion. This unfinishedness is not emptiness. It is possibility. In the quantum world, particles shimmer in potential until they are measured, and even then, new possibilities multiply beyond the reach of the observer. The universe, far from a closed book, is an open manuscript, its ending unwritten, its questions forever expanding. To stand in this space is to be fully alive, to know that what is unknown is not a threat, but a gift. Allow yourself to see the beauty of what is unresolved, the stories that don't close, the questions that resist solution, the mysteries that invite your attention without ever promising an answer. These are not failures. They are invitations to a new kind of freedom, a life not tethered to the old patterns of certainty and conclusion. The unfinished pattern is the truest pattern of all. It is the wave that never collapses, the possibility that never dies, the silence that is always on the verge of music. When you step outside the need for answers, you become porous to the world, receptive to the signals that never make sense, open to the haunted, shimmering, impossible nature of reality. Now, the questions that used to trouble you become companions, not burdens. They walk with you, not demanding answers, but reminding you of how much remains to be seen, to be wondered at, to be loved without explanation. The mind softens, the heart expands. You discover a new form of intelligence, not the intelligence of solutions, but of presence. Every ending becomes a beginning, every answer a new question, every pause a moment of awakening. The need for closure, for certainty, for the comfort of the known slowly dissolves. In its place, you find a strange delight, the freedom to play, to create, to invent, to see the world not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived. The unfinished pattern is alive in you. It is the background hum of the universe, the quiet song beneath your thoughts, the gentle, persistent invitation to remain curious. Now, when you look at the world, you see not just what is there, but what could be. You see the gaps, the silences, the places where possibility blooms. Without the pressure to resolve, your attention grows finer, more sensitive. You notice details that once escaped you. You hear music in the noise. You feel at home in the spaces where nothing is decided. The world is no longer a problem to be solved, but a field of endless beginnings. This is the quantum shift, the realization that the pattern does not end, it only ever changes. What impossible world might appear when you let go of answers? A world where joy is not a reward for solving, but a companion to wondering. A world where you can meet others not as adversaries in debate, but as fellow travelers in mystery. A world where truth is not a possession, but a shared, ever-changing landscape. Now you rest in the unfinished. Every moment is enough. Every question is a gift. The prison bars dissolve, not because you escaped, but because you stopped believing in the need for escape. The cell was always unlocked. The pattern was always open. You are free now, not because you have found the answer, but because you are no longer trapped by the search. The unfinished pattern is your home. Let it be incomplete. Let it be alive. Let it be yours. And as you walk forward, beyond this video, beyond this night, carry with you the gentle power of not knowing. The quantum world, the universe, your own mind, all are unfinished, and all are beautiful because of it. The only resolution is to remain open, to remain present, to remain curious, and to let every pattern remain, joyfully, unfinished.